Hey everybody, I'm the Drink Pro. We're going back to Buffalo Trace for a sample of Elmer T. Lee. Hey everybody, Kyle the Drink Pro here with you yet again. Thank you all so much, as always, for liking this video, sharing it with your friends, commenting on it, and subscribing. Don't forget to subscribe. A lot of you guys watch these videos and haven't subscribed. Subscribing helps me a lot. It's easy for you. It's one click. Please consider doing it. Today, I'm going to be reviewing a fun one for me personally because I haven't had it very often. It's a hard one to get your hands on. It's a very allocated whiskey, and it's one that isn't particularly expensive on paper, but it's incredibly hard to find, and you can pretty much only get it on a secondary market these days. I am talking about Elmer T. Lee. Tons of people have done reviews on Elmer T. Lee. It's pretty well-worn territory. I don't want to get too bogged down on the details of the whiskey. 45% alcohol, mash bill number 2, between 12 and 15% rye. I want to focus instead on Elmer T. Lee, the man, because he actually has a pretty interesting story and one you don't see a lot of in the modern day and age. Part of why I'm focusing on him as well is because the idea behind the Elmer T. Lee whiskey is this is a profile that Elmer himself would pick. Now, Elmer T. Lee was born in 1919 on a tobacco farm in Peak Mill, Kentucky. And from a young age, he thought he wanted to be a veterinarian. So he enrolled in the University of Kentucky, seeking to be a veterinarian, and World War II began. Well, he voluntarily withdrew from the university and became a member of the U.S. Army. He was a bombardier and actually operated the radar in big B-52 bombers. After the war, he came back to the University of Kentucky and finished his degree in engineering. In 1949, he graduated and he came to the George T. Stagg distillery at the time, which is now the Buffalo Trace distillery, as I've talked about in the past. The person who gave him a chance, sort of begrudgingly, was Colonel Albert Blanton, somebody you might know pretty well. Albert Blanton at the time was the master distiller, was running the company, and doing everything he could to survive a series of really unfortunate events. We went from Prohibition and a Depression to World War II, and we started to slide into what was a down period for the whiskey world in the 60s and 70s. But Elmer T. Lee fought through all of this and continued to work at the distillery, and he actually had a lot to do with the making of whiskey. He didn't just come in to be a taster or a master distiller. He actually began as a plant engineer in 1949, worked his way up through the company. He became a plant superintendent in 1966 and a plant manager in 1969, finally getting the title of master distiller in the early 1980s. Now, he didn't hold that title officially for very long. He technically retired, I believe, in 1985. But nonetheless, after he retired, he stayed on with Buffalo Trace, doing all kinds of different work as a Master Distiller Emeritus, which is a total bullshit title that basically means consultant. And he also was a brand ambassador up until his death in 2013. This is somebody who lived, drank, breathed whiskey. He cared about it an incredible amount. In fact, in the George T. Stagg distillery flooded, a good story from Freddie, who some of you might know down at Buffalo Trace. Mr. Lee would go out onto boats and look to check and make sure that the whiskey was okay in areas they could access during the flooding. If you've been to the Buffalo Trace distillery, it's pretty close to the river and can suffer from flooding. Elmer T. Lee is most famous for creating the Blanton's brand. It's a very iconic brand now, but at the time it was sort of a gamble. Obviously it was named after the person who gave him a chance, Albert Blanton, but it was a single barrel bourbon, one of the first ever to do that. Buffalo Trace would say the first ever to do it. But it was also very high priced. At a time when most bourbon was around $10, this was running $30 a bottle. And it was a hard sell in the 80s even. Into the 90s and the 2000s, you start to see whiskey become bigger and bigger. But in the 80s, this was still a relative low point in terms of whiskey being a popular beverage to be consumed regularly. So today we're going to taste the whiskey named after the man, Elmer T. Lee. And I will say, while I'm pouring this, big shout out to Tab25. Yes, he is not going to use his real name, and I can't really blame him because he was very generous with me, and I appreciate people valuing their anonymity. So, big shout out to Tab25 for providing the sample, but because he's anonymous, you know what we get to show. That makes me smile every time. I love it. Now, right off the bat on the nose, it really has that classic Mash Bill 2 vibe. It's hard to put my finger on, but it's super honey. It's very sweet. It is high rye, so you get a little bit of spice, but most of what I'm pulling out of this is honey and fruit, actually. I get honey and candied fruit, figs. Definitely some sort of berry. Grapes are in there, like an artificial grape almost, like a Kool-Aid grape. I get lemon and orange, but more like the candies. Like imagine Sour Patch Kids, except not sour. Like gummy candies of lemon and orange. Maybe even a hint of raspberry in there as well. It's just so fruity and sweet, the honey and all these fruits. I'm trying to see if there's anything else, but that's just so overwhelming to me and such a prominent note that it's hard to avoid. Now, I will say I think this is a single barrel product as well, so that may definitely affect how it presents to people. If you get a barrel that's very different from the one I'm tasting, you may get totally different notes. I'm also getting this sort of vanilla quality and this baking quality. It's not cinnamon, but it has a baking essence, like crust. So maybe like blueberry cobbler. I may get just a hint of like an almond extract, just a hint of that nuttiness in there as well. But it's mostly leaning pretty heavily in that fruity quality, that honey quality. So, all right, let's go ahead and give it a taste. Before I dig into this much further, I want to tell you guys, thank you so much for watching my live streams every Sunday. If you want more content like that, consider joining the Patreon. The $3 a month level gives you access to all of my past Patreon live streams and all future monthly Patreon-only live streams. I'm also going to be doing a series only on Patreon where I review every Stag Junior batch, batches 1 through 14 in order, but individually. Consider joining, consider helping me out. It'll make it a lot easier for me to keep making these videos in the future, and it'll make the big mic stand go away so I can finally buy a little lav mic. It'll be a nice change of pace. Definitely honeyed and sweet. That berry note is still prominent, but I get a little bit more of the grain qualities. The mid palate definitely brings out some of that grain. Very soft finish. It is only 45% alcohol, but the finish is incredibly soft on this. You still get some of that woodiness, but it's not astringent at all. There is zero sharpness to this woodiness. It's almost like a breadiness in terms of the fact that it's grains and wood and gentle all at the same time. Usually when I get grain notes or wood notes, they have a sharpness and a harshness to them. None of that at all in this. This is a smooth drinking whiskey. One of the things I really like about this pour is it's very true to form, nose to palate. It smells fruity, vanilla, sweet, hints of nuttiness, hints of woodiness, but they're very, very subtle. That's exactly what I get on the palate. This thing matches par on with what I'm tasting and smelling. It smells like honey and sweet caramel and a little bit of every fruit I can think of. I mean, lemons, berries, apples. It's so fruity. I love it, guys. I just love it. A little bit, a hint of the almond that I mentioned, a little hint of a woodiness, and you taste it, and all of that is in the exact same place along the palate. Starts sweet, gets fruity, then it moves into this sort of hints of nuttiness vibe, and then into this nice breadiness is what I will call it, but it's not sharp at all. This is a beautiful, easy sipping whiskey. It's not going to challenge you a lot, but if you like honey, if you like fruity notes, and honestly, if you like a little bit of that breadiness on the finish, that surprises me the most, maybe. That's not something I seek out, that's not something I look for, but that could be a function of the high rye mash bill, is that rye is showing up for me on the finish as a slightly bready taste that makes it not seem oaky, makes it not seem nutty, sort of this middle ground. I wanted to find something not to like about this, and if I have to find something not to like about this, it's not complex. 45% alcohol, it's not gonna change on the palate, it's not gonna take you for a journey. This is sipping back porch whiskey, and for the price point MSRP, makes total sense. But that's not where you're gonna be buying it almost exclusively anymore. I'm not even sure I would take this bottle in a lottery if I'm being quite honest, only because it's not that unique. Like, if you win a lottery and you're coming up against things like Elmer T. we're talking about $200 plus in the secondary market. When I think about other things that I can get around that price point, it's really hard for me to pick this over those other ones, even though I love the taste of this, because I care about the journey, I care about unique, expressive exploration whiskeys. This is a great back porch whiskey, but so is regular Buffalo Trace that I can get almost any time. So is it that much better than Buffalo Trace? No. If I could get it for $40, you bet your ass I would. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to keep drinking this stuff because it is freaking good. Thanks so much, Tab25, for the sample, and you all keep drinking like professionals. Cheers.